All right, I want to thank you guys for coming to episode 2 of Back to the Drawing Board with Goldenboybrian, a podcast where we discuss art with the upcoming pillars of visual media. My second guest of the podcast, I am proud to announce TheHugzz.
Hello, hello, hello.
How you doing, sir? You look good. You look good. Nice shirt. Nice shirt.
Yeah, I got the hoodie, but I figured I'd get the shirt too.
Yeah, I,
Yeah,
I got to get me one of those shirts. They look pretty good.
they're pretty comfy too. At first, like it gets a little bit to kind of wear in, but once it wears in, it's actually really comfy.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, they're good quality shirts. You guys can go get them on Kick. Um, so how are you doing today? I'm excited that you're here on this podcast with me. I know it was kind of like short notice. I kind of just asked you if you were interested in being on it, and you happily obliged. So I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was even though it's last minute, I'm always down for that. I'm a very instinctive person, and I like when things just kind of pop up. So it's okay with me. Usual artist thing where things just kind of hit you, and you're like, let's just go for
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, you kind of just go off the cuff sometimes, and that's why I'm excited. I'm excited to do this interview because I really enjoy your 3D modeling. So why don't you just tell the people what it is you do, and just give us a little bit of detail.
So I originally went to college for 3D modeling and 3D animation, and I was originally supposed to go just for the animation part, but they teach you the entire pipeline. And I actually ended up switching over to the 3D modeling aspect of it after college and fell way more in love with creating the actual characters rather than animating them. So I moved on to Kick after a while, which is how the industry has been recently, moved on to Kick and started streaming here and becoming a 3D artist in this space.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I actually have right here. I'm gonna show drop it on the screen here for you guys. Oh, you're blocking it. Let me move you. So these are a couple of your portfolio, and I gotta say, man, the detail on this, it's very good. It's very different than what you normally see. Now, are these all designs that kind of come from your mind, or are they all sort of like different characters that already exist? Or I like that one. That one that one looks really good. The guy with the beard, super
Yeah.
funny.
So a lot of the Disney S characters that I'm creating a series for that you guys see are actually other Kick streamers that I just got their pictures and started making the actual versions of them. But most of the creatures that I've made are based off of reference images that are like 2D versions of the characters that I wanted to turn into 3D. So it's a mix between either using references or using just specific people. Like I'm really good at making, versions of people with portraits as long as they can give me any kind of picture.
Okay, okay. Now you do all of this in Blender, correct?
In ZBrush.
ZBrush.
So
Okay, so
yes.
I'm really only familiar with Blender for 3D modeling, but explain to me, and maybe in layman's terms, like what's the appeal of using that program for maybe say like a up and coming 3D modeler who wants to get into this.
So Blender has a ton of aspects first off, and like there's a ton of amazing things you can do in there. And I have started messing around it a little bit more. But ZBrush has been always known for the go-to of more organic models. So less hard surface stuff, more like creatures, animals, things that just have their own type of muscles and body movements and stuff like that. So ZBrush has always been the go-to for that in the industry for the most part. Blender's gotten way better at it now, and the add-ons you can do make Blender just as strong. But coming out of college, that's something that they taught us originally was ZBrush, and you just kind of get it's it's easier to do the more organic stuff there than going over to Blender and doing like their sculpting thing. And there's a lot of plugins and a lot of abilities you can kind of like work towards to create little things like I've created on there. And again, Blender is completely like a great place to start with. I always tell people too when they start that ZBrush is a paid for program, Blender is free, If they have the money, go the ZBrush route. But if they don't have the money and they just want to, learn, Blender is definitely a way to go. And I would always recommend either app that they want to use.
How much does that program cost?
It is about $45 a month. They used to be
Okay.
paying perpetual licenses until they got bought out by Maxon, who makes Cinema 4D, and then they switched it to a subscription-based service now.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I've always wanted to dabble into the 3D aspect of creating art, but it always seems very overwhelming to me. I can barely get by just making cartoons. So major props to anybody that can do this stuff because to me it's very impressive and the amount of detail that goes into it. Um, so I kind of want to start in the beginning of your artistic journey. Um, wh- how did art kind of become part of your life and what you wanted to do?
So majority of my life has been filled with it. When I was 5 years old, I started like picking up a pencil, just sketching things, drawing little cartoons and stuff like that. And began from that age just kind of going every chance I could get, I'd find something to draw. My mom would buy me a ton of these books that were like how to draw certain things, how to draw certain creatures, animals, things like that. And I would just kind of copy the same type of drawings, learning how to do it over and over until I got used to it. And there was this specific drawing that actually really stood out to me that I remember as a kid where I drew a Frankenstein creature. And it was a very like it was probably the most detailed piece I did for my age, and I was only about 10 at the time, and it came out really well. But I remember my family kind of looking at it and thinking that it was a little weird because when I drew it, he's supposed to have a finger that was pointing down. Well, I accidentally put the middle finger when I was drawing it. And my family was like, he doesn't understand. And I didn't at the time until later on when they told me about it. They're like, he doesn't understand that that's the middle finger. That's not the finger he should be holding up. So that specific piece always stands out to me when I think about my past as a childhood, drawing, getting into it, and I always remember that specific one and just the memory behind it that got me kind of going into art itself.
That's so cool. Do you still have that drawing?
My mom has it somewhere laying around. I'd have to like I know she keeps like every drawing that I've done when I was a little kid, she always held on to and keeps it aside just as like a reminder of where I came from and how I've grown. So every once in a while when I have like a art block or I'm, not feeling the greatest, she'll always just kind of be like, "Well, look at the stuff you used to do as a kid and look at how much you've grown now and it's way worth it to keep doing what you're doing."
Yeah, I can actually totally relate to that because when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist. That was like in elementary school. Like I always was making cartoons. I had this comic book series that I did. It was Toasty and Crumb, and it was a piece of toast who was a superhero, and he had a sidekick that was a crumb, and he kind of looked like Meatwad thinking back at it. But it was always something that I wanted to do, and I've gone back and I've actually found some of those old comics that I made and stuff, and it's just like kind of crazy, like to think like this is where I was and this is where I am now, and so it's always good to have those references, even other things like I found this Zelda drawing that I did when I was in like eighth grade, you know what I mean, and like that like kind of brought me back too.
Yeah, it's always good to like go back and look at the things. Even then, not just looking at the advancement of how you were then versus now, but looking at how like when you go back and look at how good you were then too. Because you think of kids that are that age and you're like, man, some of these kids are still drawing stick figures and there's nothing against that. But then you look at the stuff you draw and you're like, I was actually really good for the age that I was at. And it was something that I fell in love with. And it just always brings back happy memories when you think about it.
Now, do you think when it comes to being like a younger artist and being pretty proficient at it, I would say, do you think that is like a natural talent that people have, or do you think that that's just something that people can acquire?
I think it's a mix of both. I think anyone can learn to be an artist in my opinion. Like anyone can pick up the pencil, take books that teach you how to do it. You can look on YouTube and learn different techniques to do it. But I think the aspect of where it comes like a natural talent is that kind of above and beyond look. Like everyone can create something that looks like a normal piece, but if you want to go above and beyond and make a piece that stands out, I think that's kind of where it takes the talent because you need a creative mind that can take something that someone already made and just kind of up it by 10 and make it something completely new and fresh that no one's seen before. So I think the talent comes after that point where you have to kind of like push that piece that everyone else can do and push it further to make something that nobody's seen before.
Yeah, I think some people are just like kind of born with it a little easier when it comes to creating certain things. But pure skill just comes with that, 10,000 hours of mastering your craft kind of deal.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, it's the true artist struggle. You're definitely not even at where you want to be. I know I'm not.
Hmm.
It's just always trying to evolve as an artist and try to push beyond what you think you're capable of doing and being creative.
And I think one of like the worst parts of it is like even though you see yourself not to where you're at, no matter how far in you get, there's always that artist issue of picking yourself apart and always wanting to think that you're not at that point. No matter how good your art is, you always have that struggle of like, well, I'm not doing great, I'm not doing better, but then you kind of see yourself progress more and more, and it's like, well, I am doing good. So you just pick your art apart more and more the better you get because you just want to keep progressing. It's like that perfectionism that really hits you.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like I can kind of like I draw on the iPad, and I can go back to when I first got the iPad like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I could look at like the first thing I drew on there and then compare it to like the last thing I drew, and it's cool because you could just gradually see the progression go more and more and more. And I'm sure you kind of have the same thing. You probably have old files that you've looked at and been like, oh wow, like I was terrible. It was still
Yep.
probably pretty good, but at the standard that you were at then, you probably thought it was like you were like this is the best, and then now you look at it now and you're like this is terrible.
Mhm. Yep, that struggle really hits you. And like you always grow, so you're always gonna look back at things and be like, man, that's where I was at, and now look at me with what I'm doing now. And you'll go even further and be like, man, that still wasn't even that great. And you'll just keep progressing. But it helps you grow. It helps you kind of picking yourself apart, helps you become an even better artist. So
So what's the dream? What's the dream with doing the 3D modeling? Is that what you would call it? You would call it 3D modeling?
yeah. So my specific thing is a 3D modeling. I refer to myself as a 3D artist just because I can do the entire pipeline. So I can animate it, like get an entire 30-second animation, stuff like that. So I can do the entire process. So I call myself a 3D artist. It's just more of a general look, but like majority of what I do now is 3D modeling.
Okay. And like where do you want to go with that? Are you trying to maybe work at a game studio or work with like a Pixar or something or
So my end goal was always to work on music videos for music artists. I've always wanted to create how we get those visualizers where when a song is going on, it maybe has like 10
yeah.
seconds of a really cool animation. That's always been a goal of mine to create that. And that's actually possibly coming to fruition with Kicktunes. I don't know if you've heard of that yet
Oh yeah,
with
dude. We're
that
on
they're working
Kicktunes.
on. Yeah, so like that's something I've always wanted to work on, and I've actually reached out to some of the people at Kicktunes, and it's something that they're hoping to partner with me with. So that's been a dream of mine, and it's actually something that's close to coming true, which is like it's ecstatic. I can't believe that I've actually got the opportunity to do it, and Kick's given me so many opportunities to fulfill these dreams.
Yeah.
And I actually had originally wanted to go to a movie studio and work on movies or a TV show. And like one of my favorite stories to tell about that was I was very, very close to working on the Avatar 2 movie. I was going to animate some of the creatures in that movie and
Oh
actually
really?
work on, yeah, a project for there. And what happened was I got about 5 interviews in, which the whole interview system is just crazy in this industry. But I got about 5 interviews in, got to me and one other guy. We got to the very end, and then they told me, "Hey, sorry, we're going to go with the other guy." Understandable. The other guy had really great work. We talked a little bit, and then I found out that the guy actually quit a month later
Oh wow.
and left the company. So I reached back out to the hiring manager and I said, "Hey, if you guys still need me, I know that guy quit. If you want to use somebody else that could help out." And they said, well, that really affected our turnover rate. We can't really hire anybody right now because it'll look bad on our sheets
Oh wow.
afterwards. So we can't do that. So he kept my information. I haven't heard anything since that was about a year ago. But like the fact that I got that close still it gave me the hope that like I knew I was doing something right. The fact that I could have that chance of working on such a great movie and something so big as that meant that I had to have been doing something right with my artwork for someone that big to notice this.
Yeah, man, it's kind of it kind of goes back to I don't know if you were here for the last interview I did, but we were kind of talking about that how it's kind of the corporate world is kind of making it hard to be an artist, I would say. Um, you always got to deal with the suits trying to tell you where you're gonna go. But
Yeah.
I always look at every opportunity and every loss as kind of a blessing in disguise. Like that probably wasn't where you were supposed to be. If you were working on that, maybe you wouldn't be here doing this and having these interactions on Kick and making the art for different streamers and other people as well.
It definitely hit me later on after going over to Kick because I also had an internship before COVID hit, like right before COVID, with Illumination over in Paris. I was going to be in Paris for 3 months.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I originally had an internship with them, but what happened there was that COVID hit, so all the flights got messed up. I wasn't allowed over. So there was like a series of times where I was very close to working on these movies and twice where it didn't happen. But I finally found out about Kick because I know, Twitch has kind of an issue with their art category. There's not a whole lot of room to grow as much anymore.
Yeah.
So as an artist, my first streaming site has been Kick. That's where I've started.
Yeah,
It's
same.
where I've gone on to, and like the community has been great. But like the fact that when I started here, I said, okay, I'm gonna full force do this while I'm working my full-time job, because with the industry being at a point where it's at where there's so many layoffs and it's hard to get a job, I know I have the skills to get a job, but it's not something that's going to happen right now. It's going to be a few years before things are picking back up to where jobs are readily available and we're going to have the chance. So I needed to find something to keep me doing my craft while waiting for that to happen. And eventually it became a point where Kick was just like the go-to, and I started falling in love with the community. Everyone showed so much support, and the art community in general has shown me so much support. There's so many artists that have given me the love and kindness that I wasn't expecting on the platform. So the fact that I've kind of gotten to this point has shown me like, hey, if I don't get a job in my industry, Kick's been there for me. It's definitely a place to stay at and continue to grow as an artist, because I don't have to go to all these corporate jobs if I continue to grow myself and learn on Kick.
Yeah, we love Kick. We love Kick. We truly do. No, that's awesome, man. It's cool because I can very much relate. Like I've always been more of a musician than I've been an artist. Just a quick backstory is I used to draw my guy Chef Bug Rub, the guy you're talking to right now. He was actually part of like a political cartoon series that I was doing. He was the main character and stuff like that. And I kind of just did it for fun. And I never really consider myself much of an artist, but as I kept getting into it again, I was like, this is a lot of fun. I like drawing on the iPad. And then I came over to Kick and, I was like, okay, what am I going to stream? I'm like, all right, I'll do games and I'll do music. And then I broke out the iPad. I'm like, I have all the stuff to hook the iPad up to the computer. Like, let's do some drawings. Let's do some emotes. Let's make some things. So I started making emotes for my channel. And then, it kind of snowballed making stuff for other people and this and that. And it's just cool. It's been a very rewarding experience for me, at least being on Kick. I feel like it's allowed me to kind of rethink how I wanted to stream and where, what I wanted to be as a streamer and do as a streamer. I would have never once thought that now I would be doing an art podcast. But
Yeah.
the thing is, the reason that I want to do this podcast is because there's so many good artists on Kick, and like you said, the community on here is so well knit and tight, that everybody just kind of wants to help each other and expose, get more exposure for everybody in the whole art category in general. So I really shouts out to Kick for doing a great job.
But yeah, and like the amount of love we get has just been, it's always mind-boggling to me, because as artists we're so used to like being competitive and struggling to like fight with other artists to make our art stand out. So like the fact that every artist in here is like, no, 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 we're all doing good. We're all doing this together and teaming up is something that's really stood out to me that you don't notice a lot on like many platforms in general. And I think also, I don't know if you've noticed it as well, is that when you're streaming, it helps you kind of stay on task, because we all have that artist block. We all have that issue where it's like, I'm not really feeling it this week. I'm going to relax, play some games, and hang out. But when you're streaming, it's like, okay, I'm accountable now. I have something that's
Yeah.
making me have to do what I want to do. And then you don't realize how like you get into this rhythm and you're like, okay, I actually want to keep doing art every day. It's not like, oh, I'm not feeling it. It's like, no, you know what? We're going to do art. We're going to make this a thing. We're going to keep doing what we have to do, because we have communities that want to see it, and we want to do it ourselves because we've gotten so much into the rhythm of doing it.
No, I totally agree 100%. I really only draw when I'm on stream because I like the interactions. I like Because for me, when I draw, I can easily get distracted, and I'm sure you're the same way. But like when you're
Hmm.
streaming, like you're focused on doing that. You're focused on making that content. So it's fun for me because I think too, like I just kind of just talk to the chat and whether anybody's there or not, and I just say things, and then that kind of reflects in the drawing, and I draw like weird stuff all the time, and it's stupid stuff, but it's stuff that I wouldn't have made if I was just drawing on my own.
And it's created a brand for you that, like, I will say I love the brand, I love the idea that you've been doing, and, like, just the fact of not only the characters you created, but the animation plus the voices that you do and creating this whole thing that, like, your community loves, and I love doing it. I hop in all the time and try to lurk and just see what you're up to, and it's very enjoyable what you're creating,
I
so
appreciate it, man. It's been quite the journey. It's been something that I've always wanted to do. I've talked about it. My one buddy, I might have to see if I can get him on the podcast because he's a very good artist, and I think you guys would like his art. But we used to work together, and we'd always talk about like this idea for a cartoon that we wanted to do, and we would just like, me and him have like really hilarious banter, and we would just like riff things back and forth, and it just never happened. So the one thing I've learned as being an artist is if or even a musician, anything that's creative, um that if you want to do something, you kind of just have to figure out how to do it yourself. I would even say that with streaming, you can't rely on other people all the time to make your dreams come true. You have to, you kind of put your nose to the grindstone and work towards the things that you want.
yeah, I had that same issue when I left college. Actually, while I graduated college of my school, and there was so much that I kind of learned. But another thing that happened that, and I will tell this to people all the time, like for specific things, like art wise, there's some things where they will push you to go to college, but you don't really need a college degree for it. And I'm not telling people they shouldn't go to college. But with the way the internet is nowadays, I've learned a lot more on YouTube for the things I needed to do than actually during college. Now, the connections I've made have been great. I wouldn't have gotten the chance to go work for the Avatar movie or the job at Illumination and had those opportunities that almost came through if it wasn't for that. So I would definitely say college is great for the connections, and it's something that, like, if I wouldn't have pushed myself after college, I just would have been stuck like with what I know. But I was like, let's go on sites like Udemy, YouTube, like learning more of what I can and focus up because they only teach you so much, and there's so many cool things that you don't learn until you actually put your mind to it and study it yourself.
Yeah, dude, YouTube Academy. It's a great place to learn. It's a great place to figure things out. I can kind of relate to that because I went to college for music production, and I do absolutely nothing with my degree. But I will say it has helped me with my own personal projects as well as even streaming, understanding audio and production in general, and things like that. Um, college is great, but it's not always for everybody. My big thing with college, I think, is if you plan on working in a field that you really can see yourself excelling in, definitely go to college. But it's not a bad idea to kind of figure that out before you spend the money.
Yeah, especially with how much it is nowadays. It's a very risky situation where you take that risk and apply yourself, but at the same time you really have to think ahead of time and figure out that that's what you want to do. I actually have a funny backstory about my 3D modeling art too, if you're okay with me,
Yeah, yeah, of course,
going
of
into
course. The
that.
floor is yours.
So when I left high school, I was dealing with some mental issues, dealing with some stuff at home. I struggled with depression for like 10 years and actually found out I had bipolar disorder right as I left high school. So I took a 2 year, like 2 years off between school just to kind of focus on myself mentally, get myself ready for what I wanted to do. And I originally went to college, even though being an artist my whole life, I went to college for an accounting degree first at Purdue, and I was actually trying to get a job as an accountant because I was just focusing on money. And I thought I fell out of art. I didn't do art for like 2, 3 years at the time when I was dealing with my struggle. So I was like, well, let's just do some money if I'm not going to draw anymore. Let's find something that'll make me money. And accounting can, it was a very stable and like
Yeah.
considerate job to make what you need to make. So I got all the way to my last two classes of accounting after all the, student loans and all that. And I something clicked on the last two classes where I kind of realized I was at the end, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to be an artist. I don't know why I took this route, and something just completely switched in my head. And people have told me before, like, oh, well, you just wasted like 2 years, 3 years of like learning. And I'm like, well, I didn't, because if I didn't take that, I probably would be sitting at home not doing art. I never would have clicked in my head, like, this isn't it for me, and would have made that switch to 3D modeling because I was originally a drawer, just a drawer, sketching, all of that. I never even did 3D modeling, animation until after that, when I realized like I got to the end, I was like, well, what do I want to do if I'm going into the art phase after dropping out of accounting school? And I said, well, you know, what'd be really cool is I'm always a huge movie fanatic. I love every type of Pixar movie. I love every type of Skydance movie. I love like Ice Age, all those different animated cool things. And I looked into the college that I went to, Full Sail University. And I was like, this is really cool. I said, this is something that I love to death. I love watching all these animated movies. Let me kind of take advantage of this and go into 3D modeling, animation, and just learn how to do this stuff. Because if I want to be an artist and I don't want to, and I can't sketch anymore because I just kind of lost that bit of creativity, maybe this will push me back into it. And ever since then, I've loved my artwork. I've gotten back into it. I felt happier. Like everything's just kind of changed for me. And I will never take back that accounting school background that kind of got me to the point of where I had to flip my switch and go back into the art scene.
Yeah, wow, that's a good story. That's yeah, you know, I can kind of relate because I think everything in life is kind of a stepping stone to where you're headed and where you want to go. You know what I mean? And it takes it you know the school system kind of sets you up to think that you got to know who you are at 18 when you graduate. But we all know that's not the case. You know.
Hmm. Yep.
So you know we grow up, we learn a little. How old are you, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
20, 26.
You're 26. Okay, I'm 29, so I'm only like a 3 years older than you. But dude, even thinking back to where I was at 26, I was a completely different person in those 3 years, and it now I'm a father, I'm married, have work full time job doing the streaming thing, so life can change very quickly, and your priorities can change very quickly, and I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah, people get a little caught up in just trying to maintain on what they're on, but they don't realize that change is always necessary. And they think like, oh, if things aren't the exact same, then something could happen that could ruin everything. And it's like, well, that's how growth is. You have to be accustomed to change and learning that like some things are gonna change no matter what. You can't control everything, and if when things change, you need to adapt, not just try to stay back and be like,
Yeah,
oh, well, that
exactly.
happened, so I'm just stuck where I'm at. But like, it's good to kind of embrace that change and learn from it. Like I'm in way more debt because of the accounting school, and that sucks. But I know I'll pay that off over time, and because of that, I'm back to where I am, loving what I'm doing. And I would have never been on Kick. None of this would have happened if I never originally went to accounting school. And I thank my past for that, for doing the mistakes that I made, because I wouldn't have learned without that.
One thing that I like to ask on this podcast, which I think is going to be a running question, is the how the artist I'm speaking to makes an income. How do you monetize your art? How do you create a revenue stream for your art? Not that you have to give away all your secrets, but I think it's good to know for maybe that there's somebody who's trying to figure out a way to do this themselves, a younger artist who might be, aspiring to kind of do this as a living. So, what are some tips or maybe some ways you would suggest to make money doing this?
So there's always the route of trying to find specific companies that obviously you can cater towards. And when you build your portfolio, one of the things I will say as an artist is to not build your portfolio just in general and show like some of your work. Focus on a company that you want to be a part of if you're going the company route, and put all of your art to creating that type of style. Show that company that you know their style, you know their work, and that you can be a great part of their system. Because just doing a random style, like if you're going for a Disney aspect, and you're doing things like anime characters, Disney's going to look at it and be like, oh, well, that's not really our style. How do we know you can do what we want you to do? So it's very important, if you're going the company route and want to work at a job as an artist, to cater your art to that specific company. If you can do that art, if you want to be with that company, do a bunch of art pieces that cater to that company and show them you can do exactly what they do. Show them that you can help them and guide them in the process. Now, if you're going to do the aspect of freelance, that's another perfectly fine way, where if you want the creativity yourself to do what you want to do, make sure that you're able to go to websites like there. My favorite one is Fiverr. I will always recommend that for like if you want to get into simple freelance. It's the easiest way to sign up and kind of get in contact with people and help people kind of find you. And you can use social media to kind of push yourself as well. But freelance work is always another option if you feel as though you don't want to go the route of corporate entities and going into different companies and stuff like that. You get to be yourself. You get to work on your own pieces, and people can hire you for your specific style. You can reach out and say, hey, if you need anything done in the Disney style, like I do with the portraits that I've been doing for my Kick series, reach out to me. I can make a Disney version of you as an artist.
Hmm.
And there's people who will buy into that. It's the same as Etsy, where like you put your own work out and just put these cool little drawings that you do. Specific people are going to like that idea and buy it because they like the art that you do. So you can go the corporate route, you can do the freelance, you can even do the social media route where you get paid on social media if you're creating your art. We see so many shorts nowadays of artists that do like an entire drawing that's sped up, and people love that. People will do that, and then social media companies pay you for that type of idea. So there's three different opportunities there alone, and I'm sure there's more I could name and find out and easily get more money off any of those. But I definitely think those three are the main ways of getting great revenue if you ever want to like get into monetizing your art.
I think those are all great options. I actually made a Fiverr account, but I haven't really done much with it. I got to update it a little bit. There's some very crude drawings on there. But yeah, my wife, she's a fine arts major. She does watercolor paintings, and we're actually going to get her on the podcast too, at some point. But she does like a lot of that stuff on Instagram and things like that. And I'm like, you can definitely make money just from making these videos.
Hmm.
It's just getting your name out there and the exposure.
And the
Um,
connections are always important too. There's so
yeah,
many like good connections you can make with that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing I like about the live streaming is, you meet so many different people, so many different things are needed. And it's cool because I can say, somebody comes to my stream and they're like, "Hey, I want emotes," and they want a specific thing. Well, I could be like, "Well, I'm not really capable of doing that. Why don't you go check out Hugs, or why don't you go check out this person or that?" You know what I mean? It's cool that we can all kind of use our different skills in different ways to make something that the customer exactly wants.
Which there's a competitiveness to that on like other platforms that like I've seen before where people be like, "Hey, I want these emotes," and that person be like, "All right, I'll make it," even though I don't usually do that stuff. And they'll make those emotes, and then the person's like, "Well, this came out good," but then you look at another artist, like, "Well, I could have gotten it there, and it was a lot better," but that other artist didn't recommend that person to do that artwork. They just wanted it in for the money, which I get people are doing it for the money, and that's how we survive sometimes. But if you want a specific job and you know you're not gonna be able to do it the best as some other artists, it's always good to recommend somebody else. I will always
Yeah,
recommend it.
of
Like if someone
course.
came to me and was like, "Hey, I want these really like funny looking, like adorable drawings of like artists and characters," I'd be like, "Okay, go to Goldenboybrian. I'm a 3D artist. I can make you really cool 3D work. I can do After Effects, make some cool little effects, but there's no way I can do like the type of stuff that Goldenboybrian does because I'm not in that field anymore. I'm not great at like the little like character versions, like the doodly type of stuff."
Yeah.
And like I would definitely recommend, you going forward if I had somebody that asked that and be like, I'm not gonna spend the time trying to give you a half like great drawing when I can give you an amazing drawing by a completely other artist.
Yeah, no, definitely. So one thing that I want to touch on that I think is pretty big, especially for what you do, because I look at your drawings, and I'm just gonna pull your little promo reel back up here and just kind of fast forward a little bit. But I look at a lot of this stuff and I say, wow, this is really good. Um, Now there is a big aspect to art nowadays when it comes to AI. What do you think about AI and its capabilities, as well as you think that it's kind of in competition to you in what you create, especially this bear? I look at this little bear guy and I see him and I think, wow, I feel like I could like maybe make that with like an AI program. Not that it would be exactly the same and I could get the details with how I want, but what do you think about all of that?
So one of my favorite artists that I always look up to in the 3D field, he's a great 3D artist. His name is Michael Pavlovich. He's a really strong guy. Like he's a pretty much the grandfather of ZBrush. Everyone calls him like all ZBrush artists look at his tutorials to learn things. He knows the software in and out. And one of my favorite things that he said about AI in general on a live stream once was he said, AI is not going to replace us. It's a tool to help advance us and make the little processes a lot easier. So one of the things that we have to do in 3D modeling is this part called retopologizing, where like you see the models that I've made, but when you take off all the skin and all the colors and stuff, they're just these little blocks. They're little blocks that have to be made, and you have to make them a certain way so that when you add bones to them to animate them, they don't get all deformed and look weird and everything. And one of the pluses with AI is it's starting to become a point where AI can kind of do that for us. We no longer like there's a specific program in ZBrush that's called Z Remesher that kind of like redoes all of that thing called topology for you and changes all of these little squares to make them uniform, make them even, so that when you kind of move the character and make them walk, they're not like just kind of bending the way that the human body would bend. You set it so that it bends the right way, moves like a actual human would, like makes it way more realistic. And as modelers, we all hate retopology. We hate it. We wish we could just create the character, send it over, and then it's like, oh no, you guys got this. You know, now it's fully modeled. We don't have to do any extra stuff. But with these programs, you have to do that in between point called retopology. And one of the things that Michael Pavlovich talks about is there's AI now that can do that. They can do like they can create this retopology and resquare everything, so you don't have to do that hard part. So I think it
Interesting.
helps it takes away the tedious task for us, so we can really be artists. Same with like certain After Effects things. I can get After Effects or in Photoshop, or like not After Effects, but I can do AI in Photoshop to create a certain image in the background, and then I tweak it a little bit, work with it, and it helps me kind of get that tedious part of like doing a whole background that I may not be able to have the skills to do, and just kind of paint it myself, and then just kind of fix it up a little bit, make it my own, kind of add to it. So a lot of artists are against AI, but I think it's a tool in the future to help us. It won't take us over because AI doesn't have the human capabilities. Like I don't know if you've ever seen the new things with Sora with OpenAI,
Yeah,
the
I've
little
seen a
videos
couple of
that they
those
made.
videos of like the old Western town and things like that.
Yeah, so if you ever like go into a artist community, like animators especially, they will pick that thing apart so bad and be like, well, look, this piece is missing here. This isn't moving the way it's supposed to. This isn't doing what it's supposed to. And it feels like robotic. When you look at those videos, they look good, but they you can tell as an artist standpoint, they're robotic. They don't have that life that comes into it when an actual artist creates it. And that's one of the things that AI won't be able to do that we can do is put life into a scene. AI can create the same scene, but you're going to feel somewhat different when you're watching a movie that's created by AI versus like someone actually creating it. You're not going to get the emotional aspect that really hits you. So that's something where we will always excel at. And I think we need to stop like pushing AI out of the way and saying, no, this is going to take all of our jobs, and saying, okay, what can I learn in my program that AI can make easier for me so that I can still do my creative aspects without all the little tedious stuff that I have to mess with. So I think AI is definitely a tool in the future that we should use and try to embrace rather than thinking that it's going to take over everything that we do.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And just as a quick reminder, folks, we are sitting here with TheHugzz. What are all your social handles? If you could just maybe shout them out real quick.
Majority of them are just TheHugzz, TheHuggz. It's with two Z's. Majority of them are all like the exact same thing. I think the only one that's different is I think my Twitter is the same thing, but with a underscore in between the and hugs. I forget which one of them is. There's only one that's different, but the rest are all the same. I always forget the one that's different, but yeah, they're all the same thing. I'll even type it in your chat for anybody that's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
kind
of
of hanging
course.
out in
Yeah,
the
and we're
chat.
gonna get all of this in the description of the video on YouTube for anybody.
Yeah.
Um, we'll get all your socials linked up and everything like that. Um, this is a good conversation. This is very free flowing. I very much enjoy it. Um, another question I like to add is, so you were saying earlier how you like to look back at that Frankenstein drawing as kind of like a little bit of inspiration. How do you handle being in an artistic rut?
Um, So the biggest thing that I always say is to either find something else that you love and do that to the point where it's gonna be a weird saying, but do something else that you love to the point where you get bored, so that you get so bored of something else that you want to go back to something else that you didn't want to be a part of. So if I'm great on art, but I love like I don't know working out or something, but I don't do it as often because I got so involved in my art, I'm gonna go work out until I'm like, all right, I think I'm kind of chill with this. I'll just go back to like maybe working out a little bit, and until I like hate it, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, well, wait, I took a break from my art, and I had this little like other thing I was focusing on so much. Let me go back to my art because I'm already bored of something else that I love, and kind of like replacing it back and forth is one way that I mess with it, which is kind of a weird thing that I do, but it seems to work for me, which has been it's been something that's done great. But another thing that I do is kind of just saying you kind of got to force yourself into it. Like I said, with us doing Kick and kind of keeping ourselves accountable. I guarantee you, if I didn't have Kick, I'd maybe do like one of these models maybe once a month, and then spend the rest of the time just playing video games and hanging out with friends and just doing my regular full time job. I wouldn't be doing the art stuff that I am. So it's good to find something to keep yourself accountable. and then understanding that like you might not feel it, but you got to do it. Like this, like I was just saying with working out, you know, we all have to kind of keep ourselves active. We have to stay exercised to be healthy. None of us really, you know, some people might enjoy it, but majority of us don't enjoy having to go for a run out every time. But like you start it and you start doing that run, you're like, oh, this feels good. You know, I feel better about myself. Same with art. You get into it, and at first you're like putting down the pen, you're like, or the pencil, and you're like, well, this is kind of all right. I don't know what I'm doing. And you get halfway through, and you're like, I actually want to finish this. I want to keep going, and it just
Yeah.
kind of spirals, and it kind of gets you like going and getting the juices flowing. Where like you might be in a rut at first, but you got to force yourself into it to kind of break out of that habit and unlock your mind a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's when you're one thing I always learned in audio school is just always taking a break from the mix and coming back from it later and listening to it again. When you record something, same thing with drawing something is, you record it, you're like, I don't know how I feel about this. Let me go do something else and then come back to it later. And you're like, oh, okay, I see where I was going with this. I mean, I've had that situation happen with a lot of songs where I've sat on them for a long time and you know been like, oh, this sounds like garbage, and then I go back to them, I'm like, oh, actually that wasn't that bad. And that's kind of how I released my last album. Actually, was they were all songs that I was sitting on that I recorded for like a year and a half ago. And I just, I was like, you know what? What are they going to do? They're going to sit here on the computer. I might as well release them and get them out there. And then it
Mm.
kind of motivates you, um, to just keep going in a sense, to like make more.
And I think to like kind of piggyback off of that, it's really helpful to kind of like the stepping away part helps not only with realizing like how you're doing and realizing okay I'm doing a good thing, but I always do this with my stream, and my stream sees it all the time where I'll be working on a project, one project one day where I'm creating a character, and then the next project, the next day I'm like on the stream and I didn't finish the character yet, but I'm working on something else. But like people are like, well, why don't you finish the whole project in one go? But they don't realize that you have to take your eyes off of something after staring at it for so long to kind of get that aspect of like, oh my God, this whole piece is wrong. And I didn't even realize it because I was so like stuck on focusing on it. Like I may be doing a character like one of my Disney characters, I step away after like a few hours, come back, look at it, I'm like, oh my god, that eye is completely off. That doesn't even look like a real eye to me. And I'm like, I gotta fix that now because I didn't realize it before until you take that break. So I switch a lot between my streams. And I actually have had somebody recently ask me, like, hey, did you ever finish that other project? And I'm like, yeah, I finished it, but I switched between my projects to keep my eyes like kind of readjusting, kind of getting back into each project. So I'm not just staring at the same one constantly and just getting stuck on that, not realizing that there's pieces that are wrong too. Like we always look back and we're like, okay, these pieces look great, but if you take those breaks, you see what's wrong with it as well. You come back with those fresh eyes, and it helps make your projects better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. We got some questions from chat I'd just like to address real quick. We got a question from Invixity the Pirate. If an individual is fresh in the world of art, what advice would you tell them?
My best advice is find something that's beautiful to you. Look around for pieces, paintings, artists, like, and kind of study them. Take a real good look at something that you think you want to do. Like one of my favorite artists is Monet. I love Monet's work. I
Yes,
love water lilies more than anything. It's one
all
of my
that
favorite
impressionistic
pieces.
art.
Oh yeah, the French impressionism was just amazing, and I love the work that Monet did. And I studied Monet a lot. Like throughout college, we had to do a whole history piece. One of my classes was art history, and that was one of the people that I studied the most. And you learn a lot about not just what they do, but what you can apply to your own artistic skills. So a lot of the color work is the same type of things that I like to work on with him, because one of the things that I love the most about Monet that I never knew about was that he did all of his drawings, like his paintings, outdoors the entire time. No matter the weather, all of his work was done outdoors. If he had to put a tent up, he never did his outdoor work like any of the pieces that you see that are outside. He never did them indoors. He did all of his pieces outdoors so that he could remain in that environment and understand that environment, which is a really cool fact that people don't realize. But like, it helps to study an artist that you feel you want to draw and the art that you like, and really take advantage of that art and be like, okay, what did this artist do so I can learn from them and see if maybe I can get myself in the same mindset and create that artwork. So I would say focus on an artwork that you like, certain things you like me with the movies. You know, I focused on that now and I created all these cool models and animations. So I think that was a great aspect to work on. And if it wasn't for me, you know, finally pushing in and saying, I like movies, I'm going to work on them and create things for movies, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. So I think that's one of the key aspects I would say is find a specific piece as an artist that you like, certain things you like, whether you like creatures, animals, and just study the heck out of them. Do what you can to like learn more about them, learn the anatomy of a creature if you want to do that, of like animals. Just study it, and you'll in no time be able to just kind of pick it out of your brain without a reference and just go, this is exactly how it is. I know where this bone is, I know where this part goes, and you'll become way stronger. You'll fall in love with the piece because you've studied it so much, you know everything about it. Your mind will just go like free flowing with all of those ideas.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a big thing that I would like to stress too is to just try not to be so hard on yourself when it comes to making art. You know, have fun with it. It's supposed to be a fun thing. It's supposed to be a creative thing. I think when you focus on too much of where you're at with something, rather than where you're going, you kind of get pigeonholed and you get stuck in this rut of like, well, I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be where I want to be. And you know, like we were talking earlier, you know, we both were not at the place that we want to be, and we're still not at the place where we want to be. It's an ever growing process. Doing creative aspects, especially art, you know, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of just doing it too. Figure out what you like to draw. Figure out what it is you like to create. Maybe it's not even drawing. Maybe you want to be a sculptor or something. You know, you never know. There's so many options to be creative, and even exploring a different creative avenue could make your original one better in aspects.
Hmm.
Um, what I'm totally blanking on my next question. um, oh, so we're kind of we've been going for like 45 minutes, which is pretty good. It seems like time's flying. So
Hmm.
I don't want to put a stop to the conversation if we think the conversation's going certain places, but I want to get more into HugzZ the person a little bit. I want to ask, what are some things that some people might not know about you? What are some things you like to do outside of art? And just kind of tell us a little about yourself.
So I am obviously a huge nerd, as I said, on movies. Love movies to death. I'm actually a huge horror movie fan. And something else I've wanted to move into is maybe creating something for, horror movies as well on the side. But I'm a huge horror movie addict. Anything scary, I love that stuff, which is crazy to me that people don't realize it because I have such a cutesy type of gamer type of channel, and everyone thinks like, oh, he's really friendly guy, he's really nice. And I've gotten the compliment of being a sweet guy, but people don't realize how my mind works outside of that, and I'm really good at kind of like keeping it diversified, kind of like keeping that part to the side, and that I have that darker aspect of loving horror movies, loving creepy stuff, and all the little things that people don't see on my stream as much. So I think that's something else that I love to tell people about that they don't realize is there's not, I'm not gonna say like a scary side, like mentally scary, but like there's a scary side of me that people don't get to see unless it's off stream and realizing all the creepy stuff that I love getting into. And I don't reflect it on my art as much because it's harder to get an audience with that. And I try to cater my stuff more to my audience while still loving what I do. And I love the stuff that I create. So I'm very big on that. Horror, anything. I'm a huge soccer nerd. I love the English Premier League. I love watching all the English teams play. I watch some MLS stuff, but I'm more into the English league itself. And I love the outdoors. Like I said, Monet, kind of struck with me there. I love just walking about and just literally looking at nature. It's so weird because when I walk around with any friends, they're just walking to walk, and they don't see, like they'll look around and be like, "What are you staring at?" I'm just all over the place, just looking at things. I'm like, that leaf has like a specific marking. That's cool how nature created that. It's so interesting how like this got made. And people think it's so funny that I'll just sit there and stare at like a leaf for like hours because I'm like so interested in how that leaf came to be. Like the idea of like this tree just kind of branched out this specific way and created this really cool leaf that has this intricate design that's not done before. And I just love the art of fucking nature. I love the way that they do that. I love that they create that kind of aspect and like make things like it's beautiful how nature creates things. So I'm always an outdoorsy type person. I like going out and exploring that type of stuff. Um, I'm a very big family person too, very huge on like keeping my family, as like well up as I am. So if I'm growing and I'm making a higher worth of myself, I bring my family with me. I'm also working on some real life business aspects with my art side to kind of help my family grow as well.
That's awesome.
Just things that like I want to bring them with me. If I'm going to go up, I'm making sure my family is coming with me. Another thing that people don't realize that I do that I have on stream until I bring my arms up is the tattoos. which I think your wife would like this one. I have a full watercolor
Oh
sleeve.
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so I have an entire watercolor sleeve that I've like gotten done, and I want to get my entire right one side of my body, my right side all watercolor, and split it down the middle. The other side all black and white, and kind of make like a little split to kind of keep them together. So I always forget that on stream. People are like, "Wait, you have tattoos?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just because my arms are always down doing art, so people don't get to see like the entire tattoo side of me that I have
Yeah.
even more on my body." So I think that's another little interesting thing that I always forget about on the streaming side that people don't get to see about me.
Yeah, I have a whole leg sleeve on my my one leg. It's all savanna animals and stuff, and people never see it until they eventually do, and they're like, "Wait, you have a tattoo?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." I want to
And
get
you always
more.
forget about it.
I want to get more, but tattoos are expensive, and
Oh yeah,
it was
the
funny
amount of
because
money to
like
spend now is.
maybe like 4 years ago I had the money to get tattoos, but I was like super into buying like music gear, and I was like, yeah, I could buy a new guitar or I could get a tattoo, and I chose the guitar. But
Yeah.
I could probably do more with the guitar than the tattoo.
Do you ever like forget about it yourself too? You're like, wait, I have these tattoos until someone points it out, and you're like, oh wait, yeah, that's there. I'm like, I
Yeah.
forgot that that was even there because you're so used to them
Yeah, I
just
have
being
I
there.
have on my thigh, like my upper thigh, I have a little stick and poke of a smiley face that I got
Mm.
at a Halloween party one year. My friend gave me, and it always like pops out when I'm wearing like short shorts, and people are like always like, "Whoa, you got a tattoo right there." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do." We have another question from the chat from Bisher. What is your favorite and least favorite parts of being an artist?
My favorite part of being an artist is the fact that there's creativity that comes into my mind. The fact that I can kind of look at something and be like, I want to draw that, or like knowing that I can create that piece, just having that type of skill to be like, oh, I see like, I don't know, the new Mario movie, let's say, and I see the Mario character, and I'm like, I know how to make that. I can do something like that. And then you hear other people that are like, I would never even know where to start. And I'm like, I know exactly where to start. I know what I would do. If I wanted to make this character right now, I'd just get at it and I'd be able to make the exact same type of guy, and it's just something creatively that like I love the fact that my mind kind of works that way. Like one of my favorite things is the talk of people that don't realize that some people don't have that subconscious feeling like that talking to yourself thing, which I never knew was a thing until a few years ago, that like some people don't have that little voice in your head that talks, and like where you like I don't know if it's an artist thing too. I've know most artists have that, where you can kind of like you have conversations with yourself and that creativity hits. You're like, oh wow, this is really cool. Let me think about this in my head. And some people don't have that, which is crazy to me, that some people just don't have those juices flowing and have that type of like, oh man, I'm going to create something cool, or oh, I'm picturing something in my head right now. Like that always blew my mind. But I love the fact that my brain is able to create something so cool and like come up with these ideas, and just the fact that we're able to make something beautiful out of just where my head goes. And my least favorite part of it, even though we're creative, is that we're always perfectionists as artists. We always are. We pick apart ourselves, and we can try. We have plenty of times where like we'll be like, oh no, our art's good. What are we talking about? But as an artist, you're always going to pick yourself apart, and that's the only thing that sucks. Is it can drag you down sometimes mentally. It can really like be like, okay, I shouldn't be doing art anymore because this art isn't that good. But it's good to keep a support group that can tell you, like friends, the community. My community tells me all the time. I come in with new people and are like, holy crap, how are you doing this? And I'm like, it's not that good. Like, and like, well, you don't realize because you're so used to it as an
Yeah.
artist. You're like, oh, I know how to do this, but like that doesn't mean it's good. But then people are like, this is amazing. What are you talking about? Like, this is like one of the best things I've ever seen. You're like, there's no way. Like, it's not, I've seen better. And you're like, but as an artist, you look for better. You always do because you want to achieve that status of being better. So, like, the perfectionism really eats away at you, and it always will. You can get past it sometimes. It's always good to, work on your mental self and fix that. But that's one of the biggest troubles I will say is working on your perfectionism and trying to curb that and understanding that you're not perfect. Your art's going to go a certain way, and there's an entire community of people that love your art and think it's amazing stuff, and even if you think it's not that great. So those are definitely my like most favorite and least favorite parts of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think and I think a beauty of working digitally is we have ways to kind of make shortcuts for things and create things quickly, and I'll sit there and I'll be drawing stuff on stream, and like I have this full drawing within like 15 minutes, and the people are just like, how are you doing it so quickly? And it's like, well,
Mhm.
most of it is just because I'm just so used to working in the program and creating something. Like I know exactly the next step that I need to get to. And I would say that's a big tip that I would give to like an up and coming artist is, when you're working on your art, is to figure out where you want to go with it. Try to figure out ways to make things easier for yourself, so you're not always, struggling with this certain aspect of the art. And to, it's okay if you make mistakes, like Bob Ross says, the happy little accidents.
Hmm.
There's always ways to adjust, and if it changes as it goes, you just adjust and you adapt to it.
And one of the things I will always tell people too is one of the aspects of digital, and I will not, it's not telling people to go digital, but I always say that I appreciate traditional artists more than digital, and it's not to crap on digital artists, but we have an undo button. Traditional artists do not. They take the
Yeah, you
risk as
just you
soon as
just
they
really
put that
hurting me in
paper
the soul
down.
right now.
I look, we do what we can, but we also have an undo button, okay? And traditional artists, every time I see real sculptors, like I have a group of sculptors that I will watch on stream that are like actually making it with the clay, and I'm like, if you cut that thing one way, you got to redo that whole piece. Us, I
Yeah.
miss one little piece, undo, retry again, undo, retry again. And so I'm forever grateful for traditional artists all the way. I love my digital artists. We do a ton of awesome stuff, and especially Brian, he does a ton of really good work, and I appreciate everything he does. But I will always say that traditional artists have my respect because they're not afraid of that not having an undo button. I am too afraid now of messing up so much of not having an undo button when I create art and having to refix that somehow, especially when you're working with paint, having to recover that and redo it, that they will always have my respect over everybody because they're not afraid to plan things out and get that done without an undo button. And I love having an undo button as a digital
I
artist.
I totally agree. Like I said, my wife's a watercolor painter, and I just, I see the stuff that she makes, and I'm like, yeah, I could never do that. And it's even
Uh-huh.
funny. People like tell me, they're like, "You're such a good artist," and I'm like, I really think that you're giving me too much credit here, because these my face over here, these half circles, I didn't make them because I'm really good at drawing half circles. It's because my program lets me make a perfect half circle every time.
We get like an assisted art thing, but it lets us be more creative, which is the part I love, is
Exactly,
that
exactly.
we don't have to worry about those little details. Like, I don't know, with your wife, she might have to make like put the certain color a specific way to have it kind of blend out as watercolor, and then like she has to worry about like, well, what if I put too much and it blends out too far from what I wanted? Whereas we could be like, okay, program go specifically to this amount and leave it there. We don't want it going any further. You're gonna
Yeah,
assist me and make this look perfect.
yeah. Or I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's see if this looks good. Oh, nope, it doesn't. Let's go back.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we get to keep retrying. Traditional artists are like, I gotta plan this out ahead of time. I gotta get this all ready and then just hope that it goes perfect. Otherwise I gotta restart. Like, and it's they will always have my support. And I go into every traditional artist chat and I'm like, you have no idea how much you mean to me because you guys are awesome for continuing doing this on paper, on like clay, like real stuff. Like
Yeah.
I know I do good work, but you guys will always have my respect.
Yeah, no, and it's cool because you have something that's tangible too, that you can hold. Whereas, you could get your stuff printed, but it's never gonna be looking quite the same.
Yeah,
Like I
you
have
don't
a
get
couple,
those brush
I have
strokes
a
and all
couple of
that.
pieces that hang on my wall of things that I've made, and they're prints. I'm looking at them right now, but I could tell. I'm like, yeah, this is definitely just a Walgreens print that I picked up and I just put in a
Yeah.
frame. It's not a real work of art. Um,
Yeah, it's like going to like a Michael's store and you know that like, oh, this is stuff that's been printed like 1,000 times versus like going to a local artist and you're like, this is a one of a kind piece that like they really worked hard on. It's not just an easy print that's been like everyone has this.
Yeah, I actually worked at a Michaels once in my life. It was the worst job I ever had. I would not recommend working at a Michaels. If any artists think that they want a nice discount on stuff, do not work at a Michaels. Hopefully they don't see this interview and try to sue me for defamation.
Yeah, there goes your sponsor chance.
So one thing I want to touch on a little bit more is the streaming journey for you. And so when did you actually start streaming on Kick? You said this was
uh
the first platform you streamed on, right?
yeah, I started in October of last year actually.
Okay, so you haven't I started in July, so it hasn't been you haven't been on here that much shorter than me, but what are some things that you've maybe noticed about streaming art, other than the accountability thing, like streaming on Kick and all of that, and what are some other things you like to do on stream?
So I do also play some random games. I have a whole VR thing that I do every
Yeah,
once
I
in a
was
while for
watching that the other
stream.
day. You were playing Beat Saber. That game's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have a whole horror section too, just because people, I love horror, but that's the horror aspect people can see, where they get to see me get scared by VR things, especially when there's a bunch of things hitting me in the face and it feels like it's right there. So I love doing that for like my community, so they can watch me get scared because I love it. I love getting scared in general, just because of the horror aspect. But another thing that I've noticed about streaming is it's not just about you. It's not just about you're creating this art and you're hoping someone will like it. It's like this community is here to watch. They want to see the process. I love being able to show people behind the scenes. That's one of my favorite things, especially with my 3D modeling. If you ask someone usually like how did I don't know, how did the newest like Mario movie get made? And they're like I don't know, they just kind of made the characters and then they just kind of made them walk around. And it's like there's a whole process behind it. You have to storyboard the character, get an entire scene set up on drawing before you even start. Then you have to like make the actual character out of clay and like model it up. Then you have to add these bones to it, make sure all the pieces match up so the bones don't deform.
Yeah.
Then you have to animate the character, and all of this takes hours upon hours of work just to create like a 10-second scene. And like they don't realize that like these movies, if you had one person working on a movie nowadays, it would probably take about 20 years for one person to make an hour and a half movie if they like made it like triple A title like gaming, or like if they made like specific stuff like that, because it's a very tedious thing. And you can use AI to help you, but there's still like it's crazy. Like they were telling me, I saw this stat on one of the things with Pixar's, they have their own rendering program that it takes so long to render things because people don't realize too that when you make a picture look pretty, there's a whole scene that has to render it out and make it look real and adjust the lighting and everything, and that takes a long time to make sometimes too. And one of the movies that I like talking about is the movie Ice Age. There was this really cool fact that when the Ice Age movie was made, the rendering software that they used, if they were to have done it on one rendering piece instead of like thousands of these computers rendering it all at once, one rendering piece was going to take them 25 years to
Wow.
render the entire Ice Age movie, which is crazy because you don't realize how long that stuff takes.
Wow. So it's like a big server kind of just
Yeah,
like
so
multiple computers.
they have entire render farms for these companies that have like thousands of computers that render each frame simultaneously, so they get them all out at once instead of like, okay, here's a frame that takes about 10 minutes to make. Well, you got to go through like 2 million, 3 million frames for like a movie, whatever the math is for that, and then put it all together and then still edit it and put it all into a movie. And like back then, with how bad things were, it would have taken that long to get the first Ice Age movie.
And then now when they're not working on them, they farm Bitcoin on the side.
Yeah.
Um so with streaming and stuff and games, you a big gamer growing up too, I'm assuming?
Oh yeah, I grew up on hand-me-downs of the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Color and all that from my brothers. I had a lot of older brothers that got into games. We had the original Super Mario game where like you couldn't save, so you had to leave it on, and my
Yeah,
family
yeah.
would all take turns like playing throughout levels until we could beat it.
That's cool. What's your like all-time number one favorite game?
Shadow of Colossus from the PS2.
That's a good one.
That is always my favorite one. I played it on the PS2. They reported it to PS3, to PS4, and now I even have it on my computer. And I'm actually planning on streaming it soon to show people that haven't seen the game, because I got it ported to where I can actually live stream it on my computer and show people.
That's
Because
awesome.
that is a game I will always play every time. The music, the art style for its time was just so beautiful to me. So that's definitely my go-to game.
Yeah, that was definitely a real golden era of gaming, the PS2 games. I was big in the Metal Gear series. So like Metal Gear
Yeah.
Solid 2 and 3, like those games to me were like the epitome of gaming, just storytelling and all of that. Have you ever considered of going into gaming, like creating video games or anything like that?
So I originally had a chance with two of my buddies that were working on a game. They called it Agarthorn was the name, and it was going to be they had this whole idea fleshed out, and it was one was a coder, one was a pixel artist, and then I was a 3D artist, and we were going to kind of combine them together to make something really cool. We ended up all, splitting different ways because this is how life is, and you split and go your opposite directions. And I would make things for games. I would definitely love to create a character for a game. I actually reached out recently to try to get on this new game that's coming out called Screenbound. It's a beautiful like design game by these a couple of indie devs where you're holding a Game Boy and
Oh, I
it's you're
saw this.
walking. Yeah, you're walking in 3D, but the Game Boy is in 2D, so you can't see the creatures in 3D. The creatures are in 2D, so you're kind of as you walk through the 2D scene, you're walking through the 3D scene, and it's combining both together. And I hype them up as much as I can because the idea they're coming up with is so like fresh and new, and I love that they're doing that. I reached out to them. I was like, hey, I was like, in case you guys ever need it, put me on the backboard. I know you're a small team, money wise, it's a little tight, but I'm a 3D artist that can help out if ever needed. And they said, okay, there's like, yeah, we don't have availability right now, but we appreciate you reaching out. So like, I've reached out to game companies like that before, and I would love to create a game like specifically something as simple as that because it just looks so beautiful.
Yeah, I think we're really on the come up right now of games. I think there's the last like 4 or 5 years. There's kind of been like this lull of just like games coming out that seem very exciting but very unoriginal at the same time. Like I don't know if you've played Content Warning yet, but
Yes.
I really enjoy that game. I think it's a really cool original idea. It's with that game that you were just talking about. I think that's a really cool original idea. There's a lot of potential for the indie companies to kind of step into the world of the AAA studios and kind of make something that's different.
So, something really interesting about that game, Content Warning, that blows my mind. So, the company that makes it, every year on April Fool's Day, they release a game that is a parody of another game, but they make it original to itself. So, Content Warning is the game they did this year. They release it on April Fool's. Every year, they do one game. They make it free for April Fool's, and then after that, it costs money. And Content Warning was originally Lethal Company, but they put their own spin on it. And people don't realize that it's pretty much a copy paste of Lethal Company, but the way they did the entire like aspect of being a vlogger and like making that type of camera work turns it into a completely different game, which is awesome to me that they literally like you would think, oh, this kind of reminds me of Lethal Company. Well, it's because it was. They literally just copied the code, but they changed things. They made it its own unique style, which is really unique because that's what this company does. That's all they do is make parodies of games and turn them into something original, which is like amazing to me that you can do that type of vibe, which is the same thing we do as artists. So like we just,
Yeah.
we look for references and then turn it into our own. So the fact this company does this every year and they always make cool games that are like the same as something else, but they add a fresh take to it is something that makes it feel like an original game. So like if you didn't know that, you think, oh, Content Warning was like a brand new game, no really cool idea. But then you look at the back and you're like, you didn't realize an entire company just copied another game and just added things that made it a unique game. And it's awesome. I love Content Warning. I love the work that they did. I love the unique aspect they added, and I would have never thought it was like another copy of a game.
Yeah, I feel like it's like extra meta as like a streamer because you play a game like I've never played Lethal Company, but I've watched a lot of clips, and you're always trying to get that viral moment in the gameplay, and in a game like Content Warning, like it's legit, like you are making the viral moment for
Hmm.
the spook tube as they call it. It's quite hilarious. It's kind of funny how life is kind of just imitates itself in ways, and we just are like, oh, this is original, but like it's really just like that's real life.
Which is yeah, and that's literally like they always say, history repeats itself, and like we just add new versions of history. History always repeats itself, but it's always in a different way that you think it's something new. When reality, it's the same thing happening all the time. Especially the amount of people that copy older paintings like Da Vinci's work or Monet's work, and you think like, oh, this is really cool, but you're like that artist would tell you, yeah, I kind of just copied their paintings and just added a little bit to it, but like it looks awesome, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's another thing with the whole AI aspect, like AI copies some things, but as long as you work on it and you do what you can to make it your own type of vibe, it sucks that it sucks the whole like stealing from creators thing that they say and all that. But at the same
Yeah.
time, if you can add to that AI work and make it your own, that's the perfect thing. Like there's a new kind of like viral thing that I've seen among some other art streamers where they take a painting that's from like a dollar store from like a Michael's whatever. They take this painting and they paint over it and add things to the painting. Like it's already pre-painted. Like one of my there's another kick artist, her name's Bree TV. I forget the exact handle, but she buys these paintings of like maybe a whole cool painted aspect of like a bunch of trees and like a forest or something. And she'll like add things like little ghosts that are hiding behind it and add like little features that make it kind of haunted, which I think is awesome that you can add something like that. And you're kind of like, that's all art is. It's just copying each other and adding something to make it new. And people think we're all original, but I mean, really, we are all just kind of taking each other's work in a way. There's
Yeah,
only so
yeah,
much you can
yeah.
kind
Of
of
course.
do.
Yeah, a lot of people they tell me they're like, "Oh, your drawings are so unique," and I'm like, I don't know, like they're just like big-eyed guys. It's kind of like Garfield, you know. If you ever
Hmm.
like looked at a Garfield comic, it's like kind of the same vibe. Um,
Yeah.
but it's cool, man. It's cool. I'm happy that we had this conversation. I think it's really good. I really like doing this podcast because I think us as artists, you know, we spend a lot of time working on the art, and I think maybe this personal aspect sometimes gets missed on a lot of
Hmm.
streams. You know, we talk to the chat, but we don't always get to hear about what that artist is actually thinking in the moment, or you know what the process is that they go through. Um, you know, and this is cool too because you know you're the first streamer on the podcast. The last guy, Splat Rabbit, he just draws, you know, comics and things like that and posts them online, and he doesn't stream or anything like that. So it brings a different element to it that I can relate to, that I think makes the conversation really cool.
Yeah. It adds that little bit of where we're in the same kind of space, learning and going as artists who are streamers.
Is there anything else that you want to add before we sign off?
So the only thing that I would like to share is a unique aspect of a new project that I'm working on. If you're okay with
Yeah,
me
yeah,
kind of
of course,
plugging
of
that.
course. I actually wanted to ask if there was anything specific that you were working on.
So there are two things. One is a project that I'm trying to hopefully get on board with Kick, where I may be creating my Disney series of the entire Kick staff to get them together. I'm still talking to one of the staff members right now to hopefully get that in fruition. He wants to make it happen, but we're kind of like focusing on that, trying to get it, going. And then make an entire portrait of the Kick staff and say like this is the family that helps us grow as artists and as community members and people that are in the Kick, sphere, the atmosphere. But I had this unique project that I'm trying to work on that I would love people's help with if possible, where I am getting the community involved in helping me make a 3D fully animated scene. We've created a character that is one of the ones on my portfolio that is the lemur character that you saw,
Mm-hmm.
with the cool like hat and everything. And I have my community, anybody that's like on my channel, where they fill out this Google form that's on my Twitter and stuff, and they pick these props. So we created the character, we voted on the character as a community out of 4 different choices. I created the character. Now the community is going to pick the entire environment behind this character. They get to pick one prop that goes in the scene, and we're going to get as many props as we can, make an entire background, and we're going to animate it fully, add VFX stuff, and it's going to be completely 30-second fully animated scene that I'm going to post. And no matter how big it gets, I'm hoping it gets big because it's going to be like the first fully like done scene that I've ever done. I'm gonna make it look as beautiful as I possibly can and post it. And at the end of the video, I'm going to put a credit scene where I credit all my community members that picked a piece because you guys helped build this. So it's a piece that the community built with me. It's not me as an artist making a piece by myself. It's something we all make as a community, and you guys helped me to make that piece a reality. So you're going to all get credit on the end of that piece as well. I'll put a whole entire credit scene of everyone that picked a piece, everyone that helped me make this a possibility, everybody that voted, because I want you guys to be a part of this as well. And I think it's a unique aspect of getting stream involved in art because they watch us create it, but it's good to come up with something where the stream actually picks the art and makes it a thing. So that's like a unique aspect of a new project that I'm working on. We're done the character and we're moving on to the prop phase. So if anyone would like to be a part of that and help create something beautiful as a Kick community, feel free to, be a part of that. I have the form up on my Twitter, and you guys can help vote for a prop, and we'll go through it on my stream, and you guys will watch me create it. We'll create this entire scene together.
Wow, that's really cool. Hey, if you ever need any voice actors for any of this, you know where to find me. You know,
Uh
uh,
huh.
and
Yep.
any sort of audio stuff or things like that, I could totally help you out with that. But
Oh
I
yeah,
wanna
definitely.
thank you for coming on back to the drawing board with Goldenboybrian, episode 2 with TheHugzz. This has been a really wonderful, beautiful conversation, and yeah, you guys can check him out on kick.com/TheHugzz with what is it, two Z's, right?
Two Z's. Yeah.
Two Z's, and we'll put all of his socials in the link in the description. So we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.